Hello, and thank you for joining me today. If you're watching this, you may have questions about how your organization can utilize interns and what creating an internship program entails. My goal for the next half hour is to provide enough information about internships, our student population, and people operations so that you can focus on selecting the highest quality candidates for your internship program this summer. Here is our agenda. I am going to start off on answering the what and the why of internships. What is an internship, why you should hire an intern, and provide some context on the cadence of internship hiring at the University of Washington. Then we'll walk through the how and the who of internships. This encompasses the considerations that you should have at the forefront of your mind when selecting team members who will manage interns, as well as questions to guide your possible intern projects and logistics. Finally, we'll venture into some people operations topics, and I'll talk about recruitment practices, including timelines, position descriptions, and hiring. This will be a quick overview, but our website has extensive resources that can be useful as you prepare to build out your internship program. Now, before we jump into the content, I'll share a little bit about myself. My name is Eli. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm the internship program manager at the University of Washington's Career and Internship Center. If this is your first time engaging with the CNIC, we are the centralized career center on campus and provide career guidance to students of nearly all majors and school years. My role is focused on supporting campus partners in developing great internship programs and reflection courses for academic credit. I also oversee the administration of multiple scholarship programs to support Huskies getting engaged in experiential learning. And I've had the pleasure of interning in multiple roles in the field of public health, from data analysis and contact tracing to program evaluation and health communication. Those experiences are why I really encourage our students to take a chance and explore during their internships. All right, now let's talk about internships. So internships are experiential learning that allow students to do one or more of the following: integrate their classroom learning to something in the field, develop or refine specific skills, or explore career interests. Now, specific skills can be technical in nature, but oftentimes the most transferable skills are those that foster independence and proactiveness in students as they prepare to enter the workforce. And like I mentioned in my own introduction, internships are also a lower stakes way to explore roles and organizations that students are interested in as they approach graduation. And while there can be some similarities between internships and entry level positions, internships are explicit in their focus on learning. As an organization, your focus for the intern should be on amplifying their capabilities rather than meeting a gap on your team. Because this might be the first time in their workplace, there's also a need for much more frequent feedback on their performance than with a traditional employee. Students are also taking classes, participating in clubs, or even preparing for graduate school, and so their main focus may not always be on this job, unlike what your employer's priorities should be. One way to conceptualize the difference between an internship and a job is that they are project-based with defined end dates. They are clearly defined tasks for the intern to complete day to day, and many often end with a culminating deliverable. So a presentation, a proposal, a marketing campaign, etc. Most students will intern for one quarter at a time, but there can be the norm in some industries to intern for the entire academic year, especially as a student enters their senior or junior year. And while jobs can also be life-changing, I do want to emphasize that students gain so much more from their internship than just the technical skills. Compared to those that do not intern, recent graduates with internship experiences are 35% more likely to have at least one job offer post-graduation, 15% more likely to be employed, and even earn 6% more in their first role. So whether that's due to being able to point to concrete examples in their interviews, feeling more confident in the workplace, or maybe taking advantage of the networking opportunities during their internship, we know that internships set students up for success after graduation. Especially when so many students are hyper aware of the cost of a college degree, internships are a great way to leverage the college experience to ensure a good job upon graduation. So I've shared a lot about the benefits of internships for students, but there are also benefits to the organization. Our supervisors can become mentors for promising students, strengthen their own understanding of their role by teaching aspects of it to another person. As always, there are going to be intangible benefits from getting a new perspective and having fresh eyes from a younger person. On a larger scale, the organization can clarify existing processes when creating the intern program. So that can streamline processes for traditional employees, and students can also propose alternatives to career advancement or professional development programs that are already in place. Gen Z is also mindful of social impact, which can allow organizations to articulate their goals and mission around corporate social responsibility. And finally, you can also create a pipeline for future hiring. Strong internship programs make positive impact on not only the students, but their network as well. Having a solid reputation with your interns can make the recruitment process for other entry-level positions much smoother. So jumping to some of the logistics to keep in mind as you think about ways to integrate an intern in your organization. During the school year, most UW students will work 10 to 15 hours per week to ensure that they can balance all of their responsibilities. Full-time students are balancing in-class time in addition with studying, homework, and any additional extracurriculars that they're involved with. In the summer, some students may have the capacity to take on a more full-time role, so interns can work up to 40 hours a week. The UW is on a quarter system, so our terms are more compressed than a semester school. As you can see, the academic year starts later in the fall and extends into June before students are actually on summer vacation. So if you are looking to cater to Huskies with your internship program, I would encourage you to be mindful of those start end dates or consider building in some flexibility for the onboarding process. This might mean that your UW interns start off working 5 to 10 hours a week as their quarter ends and then transition into that higher weekly schedule in line with your other interns. Summer also tends to be the time when students have the most flexibility, so organizations can capitalize on that for their internship program. Some fields start their summer recruitment in fall, but most industries will start posting positions around winter quarter if they're looking to hire students for the summer. I will note that we encourage students to start looking for internship positions about 3 to 6 months before they're expecting to start, especially if they're underclassmen, as they may be further solidifying their career goals. And this chart shows internship postings over the course of the academic year. As you can see, the most popular months for employers to post their positions are winter quarter, so January through March, and in late summer or early fall, between that August and October time. If you're interested in recruiting students for this summer, I would really encourage you to post this position sooner rather than later to ensure that you reach the widest pool of interested candidates. While students look for internships throughout the entire year, now is a great time when they're going to receive the most communication regarding summer internships from advisors, peers, and extended networks. But I don't want to frighten you if you're still not sure about what your recruitment process looks like. As students are busy, they tend to submit applications around the closing deadline instead of immediately when a position is posted. And they'll continue to apply to internships later into spring and even into summer if they haven't found a good fit. So this should serve as a reminder to keep your postings up until your originally stated deadline, as many students do wait until right around that closing time to submit their application materials. Ultimately, as long as your organization is highlighting the projects and the skills that students will work on during their time with you, that can be enough to get strong applications, even if your overall numbers are lower leading into the summer. So while internships are not jobs, we highly encourage you to think about compensation as a key component of your program. The U.S. Department of Labor requires all for-profit employers to pay their interns in the prevailing wage, which can vary depending on your industry, existing local mandates, and the skill set that the intern needs to possess. The state of Washington passed a pay transparency provision last year, so all positions must contain a pay range. While nonprofit and government organizations are not affected by those Department of Labor guidelines, I would encourage you to provide a stipend or other compensation to retain that competitiveness. In addition to the following benefits, you'll increase access for students from all backgrounds, increase investment in the success of the partnership from both the student and the employer end. And again, you'll stay competitive with peers in the field. The vast majority of internships posted on Handshake are paid, and more students will apply to paid positions over unpaid ones. One question you might have is, well, doesn't the student get academic credit for their internship? Isn't that compensation? And yes, if students want to get academic credit for internships that counts towards their degree, they have the option to enroll in a course to demonstrate the learning associated with their internship. But they have to pay tuition to register for that course. And tuition's kind of expensive. So for the course that I teach, students apply for 3 to 6 credits, depending on how many hours a week they're working at their internship site, which means that they're spending at least an extra $1,000 and usually $2,000 to $4,000 on tuition that quarter that they could have otherwise used to take another course to stay on track for graduation, fulfill elective requirements, or just explore a topic that interests them. So wages in line with the prevailing wage in that region or industry is going to compensate the student for the work that they are doing at your organization. To wrap up the academic credit piece, I did want to note that because of the associated tuition cost, most students will choose not to earn credit. If they are interested in pursuing that, they may approach their advisor to initiate and complete that process. And if your intern has elected to get credit, they'll typically approach you or whoever their supervisor is to sign a form at the beginning of the internship verifying employment, and then at the end verifying that they fulfilled whatever the expectations were outlined in the course. Okay. So now we'll transition to think about some of the big picture questions as you prepare to start your internship program. It's important to set your vision on what you want to accomplish with the internship program and how that fits into your organizational culture. It could be a big shift at some companies to train, mentor, and support someone who has limited experience in a workplace. So, working with your leadership team to identify how much support an intern will get, who their primary contact will be, if they're meeting with other team members or having coffee chats with your C-suite folks. These are all questions to answer before drafting your internship job descriptions. Finally, the most critical piece for the day-to-day operations will be identifying a program manager who will own the program. So the program manager or internship coordinator team, again, are extremely important. If organizations do not have supervisors or managers that are willing or excited even, then it's not a good idea to start building out the internship program. It's important to align expectations of what is ideal versus what is actually feasible given someone's workload. And if multiple people in your organization are managing interns, identify if you'll have shared documentation on what milestones or check-ins that are supposed to be meeting throughout their internship, or if there might be differences depending on the role or the scope of the intern projects. I'll harken back to early in the presentation when I talked about building your brand with students. If they apply expecting a really collaborative, hands-on internship experience and end up with a completely asynchronous remote internship, then they might have some complaints. So it's critical to establish these expectations among your organization and team early on to be able to communicate that clearly with your interns. Your internship manager should be someone who's interested in supporting their learning and already has the skills in supervising others. Again, interns will likely need more direction and feedback than employees, so having someone who's really honed those skills will make for a smoother process. And the logistics of that mean that the internship supervisor should also have the ability to set that time aside. The other component of the internship is projects, ensuring that it's something really important to focus your organization while still providing meaning for the intern, whether there's a focus on a technical skill or transferable skills or both. Then also keeping it reasonable for an intern's workload, identifying what is relatively low barrier or something that can be learned while at the site instead of something that would require a lot of training before the intern can take the lead. And then try to figure out what the hours are breaking down to. Is this something that needs steady weekly hours or something that can flex depending on busy periods? Can multiple interns work on it together, or is it better to have a single student take ownership? And that might look different depending on if the intern can commit for a quarter or the entire academic year. And the additional logistics of having an intern, especially if you're having them entirely on site versus a remote or hybrid internship, has to do with space and equipment. Will they have their own dedicated workspace in the office? Will they receive any company equipment to perform their duties? Do they need access to certain software or programs to effectively fulfill their job duties? And being very clear about their work schedule, especially if the project requires minimum hours per week. And then thinking long-term about your hiring process, there's the permanent hire conversion piece. If there is the ability to become a permanent hire, what does that entail? What is the formal process and what communication should your intern expect following the conclusion of their internship? All right, now we get to jump into one of my favorite topics, people ops. I used to hire roughly 70 student staff each year in a previous role, but this again was just going to be a brief overview of recruitment and management processes to get you started. I did want to mention that we have a ton of resources on our website where you can dive more deeply into the things that I'll be discussing, and that you can also use your own people ops teams as thought partners as you begin to build out your internship program. So while we ask students to look for positions about 3 months in advance, that's also a good estimate for you as an organization. From the very beginning of this process with identifying who's going to be the internship manager to the final offer for your intern, that will take about 2 or 3 months to complete. As you can see, there's a mix of action and waiting periods throughout the cycle. Between posting positions and waiting for the closing date, that can be 1 to 3 weeks, depending on the role and industry. And some organizations may even have rolling deadlines if there's always intern projects available. And during the recruitment process, I would really encourage you to think about your audience and how you can speak to Gen Z's workplace values. Another colleague of mine did a whole workshop around this topic, so I'm going to be paraphrasing her work. But the basics here are that Gen Z wants to understand how their role fits into your organization, and then on a larger scale, how your company adheres to social and corporate responsibility values stated on your website or other branded sources. And again, with compensation, there is that desire for equity and transparency. Interns know that the work that they are doing is valuable and they want to feel like they're being adequately recognized. And because of a variety of mental health challenges, students are also interested in the community and connection piece. So here's where having multiple interns or creating some sort of space where they're interacting with a larger team or forming bonds across the organization can be really helpful as standing out as a great place to intern. On a more general note, thinking about your target audience can inform the language or the platform that you use during recruitment. And there are certain departments or majors that uniquely prepare students to be successful at your site. You may want to focus on just recruiting those students. However, as this is a learning experience, I would also encourage you to be mindful of what is actually the minimum requirement versus what the student can pick up during the onboarding process. And Gen Z is one of the most diverse generations so far, so thinking about how to appeal broadly to a diverse group of people is also helpful. And position descriptions are where you can really shine. Your first paragraph should sell your organization. Tell the students who you are, what you do, and what your mission and values are. Then take the time to outline the role and its purpose. At minimum, listing the core tasks, but if you can also outline some learning objectives that can make the position more tangible for students. Then listing out the requirements and separating them into required and desired. Required should be the absolute bare minimum that a candidate needs to be successful. For example, when I hired student workers, the required qualifications were just 2 bullet points. Are you enrolled at least part-time? And have you completed the introductory level courses? That's it. While great communication and previous experiences were helpful, those were also skills that we could nurture in strong candidates. The next piece is providing clear instructions on how students can apply, what materials they need to submit, and when they can expect to hear back from you with an update. Having all of that clearly stated can prevent miscommunications or emailing back and forth, leading up to a closing deadline. Finally, some internship-specific details, such as approximate start and end dates, how many hours a week they should expect to work, and location and compensation details so that they can ensure it's something that they can and want to commit to. For connecting with Huskies specifically, use Handshake. That's our primary job and internship board, and where we direct all students to start their search. If you're wanting to do some targeted outreach to specific student populations, you can try contacting student clubs or academic departments for their advisors to do additional research. You can also email us to chat about hosting an information session, tabling a career connection event, or attending a career fair. And there's also virtual sessions where you can connect with students for coffee chats, informational webinars, or maybe providing a tour of your facility. Some additional recruitment ideas are asking your current employees to share with their networks, especially folks who are entry level or who are already involved in mentorship programs for university students. Posting your positions on social media, niche sites, or on the flip side, national sites are also a great way to advertise your positions. And then once the application deadline has passed, it's time to select your hires. So focus on knowledge, skills, and abilities in both your application review and interview phase. Similar to traditional employees, it's best practice to create a rubric and standardize questions to minimize bias and ensure that everyone involved in the hiring process has a shared understanding of what it means to be the best candidate. Related to that, thinking about cultural add instead of fit. So creating space to reflect on what new perspectives, backgrounds, and experiences your interns can bring to the team. And finally, no one likes being ghosted, communicating with everyone who applied. A simple, thanks for applying, we've moved on to other candidates, is enough to keep students in the loop instead of having them wonder what happened when they submitted their application weeks ago. All right, so if you have any questions on how you can get involved with the Career Internship Center this academic year, please reach out to us by emailing cicevents@uw.edu. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks for tuning into today's webinar.